Well, first, I think bicycle is very important, and I bike in plus 35 degrees, 40 degrees in the summer. I bike at minus 30 in the winter, but bike is not that important as cities make it look. Sometimes I go to cities that are really bad. The sidewalks are terrible, they don't have good tree canopy. I mean, they have lots of problems for children, for everybody, and they're cycling. You know, you got 100 problems to solve before that. Second, cycling is difficult. Why? Because you need to create a network. We need to stop talking about bike lanes and start talking about networks. Because sometimes the cities, they do 3 kilometers and say, okay, let's wait to see if it works. No, it's not gonna work. If you don't connect origins and destinations, then people are not gonna ride their bikes. If people are afraid, and now 40% of the ride is safe, but the other 60% is not, then people are not gonna do it. And then the excuses. People always have an excuse. They said, oh, the streets are too narrow, and the weather is too cold, and it's too hilly. Then if I went to Los Angeles, it would be the ideal cycling city in the world, because the weather is perfect, the city is flat as a table, and the roads are gigantic, but no one bikes. So that's not the reason. On the other hand, you go to cities like Copenhagen, for example, where the weather is pretty bad. It's cold in the winter, hot in the summer. It rains all year, 80% of the days. And more than 60% of the people bike in the downtown. And metropolitan-wide, more than 41% of the people bike. Why? Because there's safe infrastructure. It has nothing to do with the weather or hilly or whatever. And now also, we have e-bikes. So with e-bikes, the excuse of the hills are gone, because now someone with an e-bike, electrically assisted, not an electric bike, but electrically assisted, that can easily go up any hill. So that is an excuse. There are only 2 things that get more people cycling. Only 2, and cities should focus on that. One is we need to lower the speed of the cars in the neighborhoods. So all of the neighborhood streets should be 30 kilometers an hour maximum. All of them. Not a few, not 30K zone, no, all of them. The big streets can be 40 or 50, the ones with 4 lanes or something, but the neighborhood streets, all of them 30. And enforce it with humps, with road diets, with cameras, enforce it. If the cars are going at 30, you can, in the neighborhoods, you can mix cars and bicycles. But on the arterials, we need networks of protected bike lanes. That is the only thing that works, to create a network. Some cities do other things. They do bicycle sharing. They put racks on the buses. They do maps. They do teaching. They do classes. None of that helps. None of that helps. If you have 2% of the people cycling in Prague, for example, it makes it nicer for that 2% to have racks on the buses. But think of someone that doesn't bike in Prague because they are afraid. It might be you, your spouse, your parents, your children. Would they start cycling if you put racks on the buses? Or if you do bicycle parking? Or you do bike share? No. The only 2 actions that increase cycling is to lower the speed in the neighborhoods and to create the network. If you don't have a network, people will not bike. I don't know any city in the world that has more than 10% bike share that does not have a network of protected bikeways, so that there is a physical separation, not a painted line. Paint is not infrastructure. On the other hand, I don't know any city that has a network and doesn't have more than 10%. So it's not really magic. You need to have the infrastructure. Everything else is excuses. Also, even the winter, there is no such thing as bad weather. It's bad clothing. Now, winter clothing is thin and light and nice and whatever. So much more than that is an excuse. Also, with the hills. Even with the hills, a large part of Prague is not hilly. A large part of Prague is flat. So why don't we start creating really good networks within the flat areas and then go to the hills? For example, the other day I mentioned Los Angeles. I was in Los Angeles, oh, but from one side of the city to the other side is 40 miles, 60 kilometers. I said, no one does 60 kilometers in Copenhagen or in Amsterdam or in Los Angeles. I said, but in the US, including Los Angeles, more than half of the trips are less than 5 kilometers, less than 3 miles. I said, why don't we start with those half of the trips that are less than 5 kilometers? If you have safe infrastructure, many of those 5 kilometer or less trips could be done walking or riding bicycles. So, I mean, that would be more than enough. Today, you have less than 1% of the trips in Los Angeles cycling. And 50% of the trips, so focus on those. Don't come with the excuse, but what if you live in one and not, no. So I think that Prague could be amazing. I think that the other thing finally that I want to say is Prague is a good city, but could be much better. But it's already good. So, but my request, like on cycling, is not to be complacent. Think of cities like Paris. Paris didn't bike, and 5 years ago, the mayor Anne Hidalgo said, everyone in Paris will have a protected bike lane within 1 kilometer in 5 years. All of a sudden now, everybody in Paris is cycling. It looks like if it was Copenhagen. Why? Because they build infrastructure. Without infrastructure, it's blah, 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 blah. So we need to invest in doing if there were no streets, people would not be using the cars. So it becomes a little bit the chicken and the egg. People say, oh, but I don't see that many cyclists. Why take away space from the cars? Well, it's like if you are gonna do a bridge over a river for the cars, and you say, oh, let's count how many people are swimming across the river to see if we do the bridge. No, you do it based on the latent demand. So the cycling should also be on the latent demand. And talking about 880 cities, anything that you do on cycling, I give you a rule of thumb. Think about it. Is it safe for an 8-year-old and for an 80-year-old? If it's not, it's nothing. Don't even call it a bike lane. It's nothing. It's just paint on the street. So it has to be safe for everyone.